I get the honor and privilege of bringing to the front of the line one of my friends who I graduated high school with. And we got to take a trip to, speaking of Jamaica, a trip to Jamaica together where we really started to bond. And then we took some more trips together and we in each other's lives for life. But she's also a therapist. And so I definitely had to have her on the podcast to share some of her professional expertise. And I get to bring to the front Chevonna Gaylor. I'm gonna let her go ahead and tell you a little bit about her background and her life. Go ahead and share, please.
Hello, beautiful people. Can you hear me okay?
Loud and clear.
Wonderful. I am Chevonna Gaylor, licensed marriage and family therapist, and I like to say that healing is my gift, but really I partner with people in the deepest of their hurts, the darkest moments, the most difficult moments that people tend to shy away from. For whatever reason, I've been gifted to walk with people in that journey during that season, and we make it to the other side of that and heal together. I learn something from the people I serve, and they learn something from me. And that's led me to operating over the last 25 years as a therapist in so many different capacities, a lot of non traditional clinical environments like Mardi Gras and Stagecoach and Coachella and major music tours, and now supporting other organizations and capacities where I take care of the people who take care of everyone else. So those with lived experience or those who are in social services. I am intentional about wellness initiatives and plans and programs where I help organizations take care of their staff to boost morale, retention, things of that nature.
I did not know you were working when I see you at Coachella because you and your husband, y'all be taking the pictures and posing. And I'm like, don't worry about the baby.
I'm
But
trying.
listen, we do life, and so I would see you guys at all the events. I was like, they always gone. But I didn't know you were sitting there doing work at that time and helping the
Well,
people who were there. That is absolutely amazing.
yeah, I had not attended a Coachella until I worked it for the first time. And a lot of the travel sometimes that you'll see me participate in will be professional travel that maybe if I have an NDA because I'm on a major music tour, I'm offering trauma services in that setting and I can't necessarily say who I'm there serving or what that
Yep,
capacity is, but I can post the trip or the experience or in a best when it's best, my husband is able to meet me there and we extend the work to also having new experiences and new adventures together.
I love that. So, husband, kids, grandkids, tell us about that.
Yes, so my husband and I, we have four children and three amazing grandchildren. We have been together. We're celebrating our 25th wedding anniversary next month. Yes,
Congratulations.
yes, 25 years. It was a dream for me in middle school. I would say that I didn't really have a model of what healthy relationships look like. I didn't know. I didn't have that two-parent family. Early on, I noticed that none of the women in my family were married to the father of their children.
Wow.
So I was, I guess, keenly aware of that around middle school. And I was like, I want to break that generational cycle. And I was very intentional about, I want to break the cycle of I want to be married. I want a family. I want to be married to the father of my children. I want a family. I want, I want kids, I want a career, I want degrees. So I started on that trajectory. However, high school, we were at Washington and my 16, 17-year-old brain started making lifelong decisions with 16 and 17-year-old wisdom, very limited. And
Same,
so
same.
it's very limited. And I was blessed with a wonderful child with a not so wonderful partner. So it just is what it is. And I was trying really hard to make that work because of that model of I don't want to be a baby mama, you know. I knew I wanted to be a parent. I really was intentional about the way that I parented my son. I really knew that no matter what, my life had changed for the better to be committed to and loyal to offering him what he needed. But I was misguided in thinking that what he needed was his bio father and me together. Once I realized that and we were not together, I was really blessed with. a partner who could be everything that I hoped my child would have. So we have raised our children of four. We blended our families, but we don't do step, half, partial. Blended our families of four. So we have four children, three sons, one daughter, and three extraordinary granddaughters. And being a grandmother, my granddaughters are my loves and my legacy. And being a parent and a wife and a lover to all are really, really major parts of my identity.
I love that. It's huge when you said that you thought that what your kid needed was this biological father. And once you were able to get out of that situation, you could find the person that was perfect for you. Like, I've been around the two of y'all together and I was like, oh, I love this so much. Sometimes you can be around relationships, you like, is that the right one? But you two together, I was like, oh, this is magic. This is magic. And so I absolutely love that. And one of the things I was sharing previously is that one of my regrets is that I didn't get to show my kids what a healthy relationship looked like so they could have a blueprint. And I heard you say you didn't have that blueprint before you, but now you get to be the blueprint for your kids and grandkids, which is beautiful to see. Yeah.
You know
Now,
where my model. Can you hear me? Okay.
yes,
My model for what that looked like, which I know is taboo today, or maybe perceived taboo from others, was the Cosby Show. I wanted to be Claire Huxtable. I wanted the husband, I wanted the career, I wanted the children, I wanted the poise, and I wanted the respect, but also the fun and flirty side. And so that was my example, and that's what I wanted.
I love that. That was an example for a lot of us. And, even when we don't have that example in our house, we can adopt, the example from somewhere else. We can adopt the role models. And Cliff Huxtable is not Bill Cosby. So, like, I'm going to just keep those two separate for real. But honestly, it's so good to even recognize that you had that as the role model. You're like, even though I don't see this with my family, this is what I'm going to shoot for. And I would say y'all have that. I think that y'all have that. Now your expertise is in trauma, right?
Absolutely. So that has, what I find is, as a clinician, you start doing your work, your expertise finds you. So, as a clinician, I start working with clients in different capacities, and what I found was the most success, the most connection, the most healing came from people who had the deepest hurts. So that's led to me having expertise in areas like human trafficking awareness, especially as it relates to foster youth. So CSEC, that's child sexually exploited, commercial sexually exploited children. Also, suicide prevention and awareness. Uh, uh, Significant grief, high acuity mental health, so that's significant mental health issues with high needs mental health, mental substance use issues, and just heavy trauma. Those areas which I wish I could prevent. I wish that I could take the pain away in the entire world. I absolutely wish I could. But I don't. I can't erase it. I can start being a part of the healing that I want to see in the world. And what I pray is that if anyone is suffering, that I and anyone connected to me, maybe a team of clinicians, and ultimately a team of clinicians, Chevonna Gaylor clinicians, will be deployed to other places in the world to be salve to the soul for those who are hurting.
I love that. You know, whew, you said suicide and it struck a nerve. A couple of one of my former students committed suicide, I think like last year. And he was in his 20s. He had two kids. And then one of the students who was at the same school committed suicide, I think like last week or week before last, and she left three kids behind. And I'm like, what is happening nowadays that's causing people to, and they were in their 20s, both of them. What's causing people to say, I'm done, let me end it all? And what causes people to get to that breaking point? I don't know if you have answers for that.
I do. I do. So First and foremost, I know that as we continue, you are a woman of words, and there's so much power in your words, and I know you love to grow, and so I wanted to just give a little language. So we've been saying the language we've transitioned to is completed suicide or unalive themselves, because what people found is when they say commit suicide, it's like a crime. People commit crimes,
Okay.
and really, to take your own life is not you're not committing a crime. That's a person who really got to that point of despair. So just
Yep.
FYI. So
I
what I
appreciate that.
no problem, and I know, especially because you are so powerful with your words. You are. I know how you pay attention to words and how profound you are with your words. So just a little bit, just want to give that. So what I found is the best way I can describe it is, you know how you have you ever had like a paper towel roll, and then it's empty, and you look through that paper towel roll, right? When a person has reached a point of despair and things are really dark, and that depression is kind of weighing in on them, and maybe they feel pressed at every point. So when they reach that point, they can only see the darkness in that at the end of that paper towel tunnel. Now, outside of that darkness, you might think, wow, her kids, right? Or their kids, and sunshine, and another day, and another chance to get it right. And so outside of that is all of this. Hope for a new future, maybe a parent or a loved one or a friend. All of that is outside of there. But when a person decides to take their life in that moment, all they can see is that darkness. It's literally like tunnel vision, and they're unable to see outside of that tunnel. And all the things that you would perceive to tell them in that moment just makes them feel like all those things will be better if I wasn't here. They have convinced themselves that, okay, my children are going to be better if I'm not here because I'm such a bad person, or I'm so inefficient. Okay, there is not going to be hope for tomorrow. Or so they can only see that tunnel. So the beauty, it's really important that when a person struggles with depression, that we remove some of the options, like the pills, the guns, the things like that, because when they're in that moment that they can only see in the tunnel, then it makes it easy to make a lifelong decision, right?
Yeah.
In that moment. But if you take that access away, right, then that causes a little bit of effort to think, and a little moment of a pause. So that's why it's really important to kind of, if somebody is in that season and you think, maybe that means making sure they're like, hey, do they have access to those things? That doesn't mean that we can prevent every suicide,
Yeah.
but there are preventable aspects of suicide. Another aspect is, it's okay to ask somebody, are your thoughts scaring you? Have you been thinking about taking your life? People think that if you ask that question, it will put that on somebody's mind. No. If I'm not thinking about taking my life and you ask me, I'm like, no, girl, what you talking about? Right? But if I am, then I'm relieved. My thoughts have been scaring me. I have been struggling. Right? So the best thing that you can do is ask. And if you're wrong, then they're like, psh, what the heck is wrong with you?
Yep.
That's the worst case scenario.
Yep.
Right? That's the
You
worst
know,
case scenario.
you're right, because when my grandmother died, I was super depressed. Like, I would go to work, come home, go to work, come home, and that was it. And I missed everybody's wedding, all the baby showers, all the events that I normally would have been to. I didn't go to any of them. And I remember reaching out to Kaiser and saying, I need to talk to somebody. And they had all these questions and stuff that I had to answer. And I remember them asking me, do you sometimes feel like the world would be a better place without you? And I was like, what? Absolutely not. The world would be a better place without some of these other people, but not me. And so it was never going to plant that in my brain to commit to even attempt suicide, because that wasn't a part of what I was thinking or feeling. But if you open that door for
Mm-hmm.
somebody to be able to talk about it, then it gives them the opportunity to consider other options. And now you can give them other options on how to deal with the pain that they're feeling at that time.
Absolutely, absolutely. And another misconception, especially in the Black community, and I think in all communities, is that suicide is selfish. That person does not believe that they are leaving other people pain. In that moment, while they're looking in that dark tunnel, all they believe is that they're giving relief to, they want to end their pain that is so unbearable, and they perceive that they don't have enough value, so that if they leave, they're not going to give you that the relief that other people will feel will outweigh the pain. We know that's not true, because I
Yeah.
know that the two students that you had, you loved them, and they were a gift to this world, and the world needed them. So many people in this world needed them, and their loss was a void that no one can ever replace. In that moment, they don't realize that.
Yeah, that's huge. I'm so glad you said that because when you first said people think they're selfish, I'm like, yeah, they are selfish. So I'm glad you corrected my thinking on that because that's understandable. If they think that the world would be a better place without them, that's not them being selfish. That
If they
is
like,
them.
I'm just messing on my kids. I'm
Yeah.
destroying them. Everything that I do is messing it up. I want to make their life better, and if I'm gone, maybe they'll have better opportunities. Maybe they'll have a better chance. So that's what they're thinking in that moment. It's not in that moment they are not thinking, I just want to end my pain and give it to someone else. Not at all, because that level of despair means that they really have thought, I think that things will be better without me. We could
Wow.
think, oh, how could you think that way? That's illogical. That doesn't make any sense. But as a person in that darkest despair, they're not thinking clearly.
Yeah, and it doesn't help when there's so much negativity in the world. People
Whew.
play people play around with like on social media talking about you should kill yourself. You're like, what? What? Why is that even a thing for you to think about? But
Mm-mm.
people are using that, and especially young people, and they're on social media, and if they get mad at somebody, they'll say kill yourself, and because of that, people who are already internalizing some feelings of I shouldn't be here, they do take action on that at times or attempt to. And I would love for you to speak about the difference between men and women because I had read that women attempt suicide more, but men complete suicide more. Do you have any thoughts or understand help us understand that?
Yes, because men tend to choose more lethal options. So that's why their completion rate tends to be higher. Women tend to choose other pathways that don't lead as quickly or as readily to completion. And both are tragic and difficult. Also, depression in men tend to manifest differently. And I know we're going to be talking about children. Sometimes trauma and difficult situations in children tend to manifest differently as well. Sometimes men, because it's socially acceptable to be more angry than it
Mhm.
is to be sad, they may be more irritable and more angry and more agitated. What I also have found in the Black community, and especially in our youth, like, and what I cannot stand the word at risk, the phrase at risk youth, but the youth who may be struggling with different dynamics. What I have seen is different aspects of the way suicidal thoughts and high levels of depression can manifest themselves. So, there's self harm strategies, right? Techniques, and self harm is not suicide. Self harm is an escape. Suicide can be perceived as an escape. They're just different. People who self harm, that's what they use as far as cutting or different forms of self harm. That is to escape the emotional pain that they're feeling in that moment. And I know I'll venture down a whole nother subject, but um, when individuals are completing suicide or having suicidal thoughts, they want to completely escape the entire emotion, usually when entire world and existence. It's like it's different. But what I have found is that in our males, I think about, yeah, I'm from LA. We went to Washington. I think about, the Bloods or the Crips in my neighborhood. They've been through significant trauma, right? And they're losing so many loved ones, losing people they cared about, difficult circumstances that led them, that contributed to them going into gangs because they needed a sense of community, a sense of stability, a sense of connection. But that hurt, do they still feel it? Heck yeah. Are they going to go cut? No. But will they start a fight?
Yeah.
And then that physical pain from a fight lead them to have the same emotional escape that someone else did,
Mhm.
because I escaped it through beating this, or me and him fighting and going at it, so I don't have to feel. Or when it's really, really at that point of despair and suicidal thoughts are there, which they may not identify it as that, am I going to go cause a shootout either with law enforcement or with an opposing gang? And that's how I completed a suicide. But
Wow.
people are not going to say, oh, he was depressed, he took his life, because that's not socially acceptable. But, oh, he went out with valor because he got shot by the opposing gang or he got shot by the cops.
Yeah. You know, so growing up right there by Washington High School, I knew a lot of the gang members. We grew up together. We played handball in my backyard together. We played school together, even before we were in kindergarten. And I remember as guys were killed in my neighborhood, they would just announce it over the PA system at Washington. You come in homeroom, they're making the announcement, this person just died,
Hmm.
and I'm like, we had to just deal with it. We had to go to the next class. The bell rang, we went to the next class, and we
Hmm.
sucked it up. But we had a shooting when I was assistant principal at my last job. We had a shooting that was off campus, but one of the students got shot through the leg because he was off campus going at lunchtime going to get something to eat. And one of the teachers got shot in the arm because she had gone off campus to get some notebooks from the 99-cent store. And so she got shot in the arm. And we had all of LAUSD sent therapists and all this stuff to talk to the kids. And the kids were all, they were all out of class with like the whole time lined up to talk to these therapists. And I'm like, we had people that were shooting at our friends and killed our friends.
Our
And
friends.
we had to suck it up and go to class. It kind of makes you feel like this generation just they can't handle what we had to handle. But
Hmm.
I don't know what's different between what we dealt with and had to deal with. Is it a problem that we dealt with it the way we did? Was it a problem with calling it over the PA system? I feel like it was, and I feel like we needed more to be able to
Hmm.
handle that. But we also sucked it up and we're survivors. So where should the line be?
Well, I mean, we were in survival mode, and I think it's a blessing that we're not training up another generation to just survive. That we are teaching them that emotional well being is necessary and they can actually thrive. So I think it's a blessing that we have that. We were in survival mode, and that gave us some grit, and that also gave us some really troubled relationships. Would I have leaned into the relationship that I led into? I don't want to say relationship, the relationships that I led into, romantic or friendship or otherwise, and all the sketchy situations I put myself in, if I had really appropriately dealt with my emotions? Absolutely, I don't think so. I think that, but did I survive some stuff? And like I say all the time, Washington put out some good output. Put out some good products. We made it to 4-year universities. We graduated. People succeeded. People made it through. But the things that we had to endure to make it through, and a lot of the uncomfortable conversations and growth that was required. I know I just recently had to have a conversation with my oldest, and him telling, we had a very tearful conversation, and him saying, we were talking about my parenting approach. And I thought I really did a good job. I thought, okay, as parents, they need a recipe. I felt like it's like a cake, right? They need, okay, education. They need love. They need spirituality. They need special, activities. They need outings and trips. They need family and friends. They need social. I thought I put all the good ingredients, and I was like, I went to Whole Foods and got the good ingredients. I really took time with these kids. Make good ingredients. They need a father and a mother. They need all that. So I thought I would put all the good ingredients in the pan and mixed it up, and they was not looking like a cake. They were not looking like the recipe. They were looking, sometimes in different seasons, they kind of were looking flapjackets ish. And I realized a couple things. First of all, they had to go back in the oven. Sometimes they just weren't done. But second of all, there were things that I thought was the perfect recipe, but actually I wasn't really listening. And so, one of the things that I realized is, as a teen mom, when certain situations happen that frighten me, so that and now you're telling me this, I'm not even thinking, I didn't think about it till this moment, because I had seen and known about so many black men who died in the streets, so many black men who were imprisoned, including my father being in and out of prison, So many black men in close proximity to me who had gone down dangerous paths. When there were behaviors that were indicative of that, then I overreacted. My response was out of fear. My response was, oh no, you stole a Game Boy from your friend at school and you lied about it. I'm going to whoop your ass. I'm going to sit you. I'm going to be so hard on you that you have to see you can never do this again because that will land you in jail or dead. But what I learned recently from my 32-year-old son was that he didn't get the message that that's really, really, really bad and my mom loves me. He got my mom hates me and I'm a really bad kid.
Yeah.
And I had to apologize and say, in those moments, I parented you out of fear and not love, and I'm sorry. And what can I do to fix that now?
I love that so much. That's huge. I remember when I was my second year teaching, I taught fifth grade. And one of my students, I was on her because they had to wear a uniform. She would take her little sweater and tie it up into a midriff. And I was like, girl, if you don't untie your shirt, and so, but there was a day when I pulled it, she was giving me all this attitude. And I pulled her in the side. I was like, what's going on? And I said, I'm fussing at you because I love you and I see you going down this wrong path and I don't want to see you go down that wrong path. And there's no reason for you to be sexy in fifth grade. You're beautiful, but you don't have to be sexy. I was like, this can backfire. I don't want anything to happen to you. And so I'm crying. She's crying. That next day, she wrote me a letter and she said, all this time I thought you hated me. And now
Mm,
I know that you love me. And we were
mm,
like this the rest of the year. And but it was sometimes what we intend to communicate is not what's received.
not
And the beautiful part of it is that you don't feel free to ask your question in the chat, Jerry. The beautiful part of it is that you can't discount what that kid is feeling because their feelings are real. And I've been the parent who's discounted the feel. My daughter, when she was writing her college letters, she she wrote about living in two households because me and her dad had joint custody. And she was like, and I sometimes I'm at my mom's house and then sometimes I'm at my dad's house and they have different rules. And this was like her big life challenge. And I was like, that's your big life challenge. I don't know if you're still there because your screen went black. But I was like, that's your big life challenge is that you lived in two different households. Like, if you know a bit of what I've been through in life, it's not that. It's way different from that. And so I discounted her feelings in that time. And I didn't say that to her, but that's what I was thinking. And I was even mad that this was in her college letters. I was like, this is your big college story? Come on now. You can do better. Um, but um, but I'm so glad that when your son came to you, and now, of course, you're a therapist, and so you know a lot better than most of us do. But I'm glad that you didn't discount his feelings because his feelings are his feelings, and he gets to have whatever feelings he wants to have, or he has. It's not even a matter of him wanting to have those feelings. That's the hurt that he experienced.
Absolutely. And we took it another step to, I said, what do you need from me now? I know he's 32, he has two children, and I feel like, I give my whole heart and soul and time and energy, very intentional as a grandparent. But I also needed to know, like, what do you need from me as my son? And he said, I heard about this guy. I saw my friend was telling me that he has kind of dates with his mom and they go do some things. And I think I would like to do that with you. Maybe we could do that once a month. So for the last 2 months, we've had mother-son time, and it takes a lot. It takes a lot out of my schedule, out of my time, but he's worth it. He's worth it.
That is so good to hear because people tend to think that kids don't want the relationship once they get older. And there's so many people that will say stuff like, well, you grown now, like they dismiss their kids because they turned 18. And I was like, what is that? It's a number
Mhm.
that society has said now you're able to do certain things, but how much has changed in a kid from 17 to 18? Nothing. And
Mhm.
so it's so good to hear that he really wanted that. And it's funny, there's a guy, one of my coaches in business, he was saying that His daughter is 15 now. He's like, I don't even know where to start. Is it too late? And I'm like, it's never too late.
Never
As long
too
as the
late.
person is still alive, it's never too late. Jerry typed a question in the chat. He said, what are the steps that teens have to follow? Um, I don't know if you can respond to that, or we need clarification on more about what he's asking. He just said, so what are the steps teens have to follow?
Jerry, we've talked about quite a few things. We talked about healing. We talked about suicide prevention and awareness. We've talked about some self-harm. We've gotten to a lot of topics. So, what do you mean by steps? Because I would love to answer your question. Just steps to follow for. Ooh, there's a lot of different areas.
Yeah.
So yeah, hopefully, if you could give a little more clarification, I would love to answer. And thank you for being here, Jerry.
Yeah. All the way from West Africa.
Wow, wow,
Yeah.
thank you so much.
Yeah. But one of the things while Jerry's typing this question, you said you apologize to your son. And that's one of the things that's so important to me. So many times parents don't feel like they need to apologize for the things that have been done, but that damage still stays there if you don't apologize. And one of the challenges for me, my mom died in 1991. I didn't forgive her until 2019. She couldn't apologize. I
Mhm.
had to go within myself in order to get to that place of forgiveness and healing for myself. And it just kept me stagnant the whole time I'm holding her hostage to what I'm feeling from 1991, where she couldn't even apologize. And I started thinking about it like, if she could have, would she have? I believe she would have, and that helped me get to a better place. Just thinking about the good that she had done and what I don't think she tried to hurt me at all, even though some of the things that she did hurt me a lot. But she was dealing with her own pain and trauma, which is always the case. Those hurt people hurt people. Okay, Jerry said he means on self awareness. What are the steps that teens need to do for self awareness?
Oh, I can definitely answer that. And before we get to that, I do want to talk about what you were saying as far as the apology. And there's a both and. A lot of times people struggle with forgiveness and that healing because they believe that if I heal, then that's letting the person off the hook, right? Like with your mom, you can forgive her and acknowledge and love her while also acknowledging that and know that she did the best that she could with what she had,
Hmm.
while at the same time acknowledging that that best still hurt you and
Hmm.
wasn't what you needed or wasn't good enough or the best that you needed in that season. Both can exist. Forgiving a person and saying, okay, I'm gonna heal for my sake doesn't mean that you're ignoring the fact that it happened. Doesn't mean that you're letting them off the hook. You can forgive with boundaries. It's possible that if your mother had have remained alive, which we hope, that you would have still forgiven her. But if she hadn't have acknowledged and made some changes, you may not have given her access to your life.
Yep. Yeah. There are so many people who don't. Like there was an episode of Oprah I was watching where these kids were, I mean, they were adults, but they called it, I forget, they had a term for it where they're like separating from their families and like really never talking to them again.
Mm-hmm.
I forget the term they use for it, but it's happening.
Mm-hmm. But Gary, for your question, what are the steps that these can take for self-awareness? Um, I would say it's kind of adding. It's a factor of emotional intelligence is a really good first step. We with any kind of intelligence, as we expand our intelligence and we're able to communicate, then that allows us to appropriately process our emotions. So sometimes we only have like anger, sadness, frustration. Those are the very basic. That's like, our primary colors. But when we actually take the time to get to know different emotions, then once we're upset, it could be we have that language to be able to say, I'm really disappointed, as opposed to I'm mad. I'm mad at you. Right now, my 5 and 3-year-old granddaughters are in the season where they say, I don't like you. And so what we do is go back and say, well, you love your mommy. Tell me what happened? Tell me what you're upset about. And they say, well, mommy didn't let me have a piece of candy. So you cannot like that mommy didn't let you have a piece of candy. We can talk about how that made you feel. It made you sad, it made you angry, made you frustrated, you felt like it wasn't fair. But you can separate the person. You love mommy and mommy loves you. You don't like what mommy said or did. So that emotional intelligence of and giving that voice, can we talk about what you're feeling? So maybe as a caregiver, I'm assuming that you have youth in your life, then honoring that voice, it's really hard because I know sometimes it can feel disrespectful. It can feel like, okay, for my granddaughter, I don't like you, mommy. And her mom is like, no. And I say that's totally unacceptable for you to say you don't like your mommy. But once we have that conversation of, I didn't like that mommy said I can't have candy, for her to be able to say, mommy, I didn't like that you said I can't have candy. Will she get the candy? No. But to actually be able to have the conversation is powerful. To just be able to say, hey, I get you're disappointed. Mm, you're still not going to get the candy, but I can hear you're disappointed, and maybe we can take different steps tomorrow. Or,
Yeah.
but those healing conversations expand our emotional intelligence and allow us to be able to communicate or process it in a healthy way. So we model it as parents and we give them space to have that for themselves. That's a really good first step.
That's so important for people to be able to separate the person from what they did. That's why I would say I don't think there's a such thing as bad kids. Kids are doing things that we don't want them to do, or we haven't taught them to do differently. But I don't think there's a such thing as bad kids, And so when you teach kids that skill of separating the person from what they did now at 3 and 5 years old, can you imagine when they're married?
Hmm.
They're able to have those skills so that they're not saying you're a bad husband or I don't like you, and now it's just a better situation for them as people. Those are character development. That's people skills that's going to take them anywhere they want to go, you know.
And I've seen you model that with Sincere. I've seen you live that. You have shown him that. I've seen you pour life into him and speak life into him, regardless of the decision he's making in that moment, and not validating the decision, the choice, but really being able to say, I see greatness in you, and that choice wasn't okay, but you still are worthy. You still are loved. You still are valuable. I've seen you model that with him.
Boy, I was so embarrassed that first time we came over your house. And he took all of Callie's toys. He's riding her bike. I was like, give her bike back. He's got the balls came out. He took all the balls. He's like, I'm taking all the. I was like, oh my God, I'm so embarrassed. He was the only kid at that time, but she was also the only kid. And
Yep.
he was so patient with him, but he was trying to take all the toys. I was like, I am so embarrassed. You were like, y'all can spend the night. I was like, we going to the hotel room because this kid right here, I'm embarrassed. Ain't no telling what he gonna do by
But
the time
but
we
you
are
did
done.
but you didn't make him feel like he should be ashamed.
Yeah.
You were like, okay, we got to work on some stuff. Like you said,
Mhm.
like we got some stuff we got to work on. But it wasn't your kid is horrible. This kid is horrible. It
Yeah.
was, it was data.
It
Okay,
was.
some things we got to work on.
Yep. Because I hadn't seen that before because he was the only child. So he never
Hmm.
had to share. So I didn't get to see that. And so now I'm like, oh, now I get to see how he is with other kids. He hadn't been to daycare before. So now I'm like, that is data. And now we see what we need to work on with. Maybe I'm gonna take something from him and play with it and see how and teach him how to be okay with somebody else playing with his toys. So yeah, I love that. Um, Something else you said. One of the things that I think, and I want you to tell me if I'm on the right track or not. When you're teaching kids, like when you're teaching your grandkids, it's not okay to say I don't like you. I believe that teaching the why behind it is important. And with most things, like even when it's like you can't have the candy right now, here's why.
Hmm.
Because and my daughter is now at a place where my grandson is always asking why, driving her crazy. But I was like, you have to answer that why question so they understand how to think for themselves when you're not there. And because I said so can't be the answer.
That's how they learn. That you and I both know that's how they learn. The why is they're trying to understand, and you can say it 8 different times. The why today, the why eight, and sometimes. So I I'm gonna offer a concept because I want to make sure that this also has to do with the question that Jerry asked, and it's called the wise mind, right? So in dialectical behavioral therapy, or DBT, the concept is called the wise mind, and the wise mind is a balance between logic and reasoning and emotion. So the belief is that it's kind of, well, I like to call it a seesaw. So our brains are kind of like a seesaw, and our responses are like a seesaw. And when our logic and reasoning is really high, so that's statistically speaking, but there's no emotion in it, then our emotions are low, right? And we're highly ineffective. But when our emotions are really high, our logic and reasoning is low, and we're ineffective there too. But we are in our wise mind when there's a balance between the two. I'm explaining that because um, I can't be the therapist to my kids. It's important to know your triggers. And I'm when I a kid can talk to me that I'm working with professionally, and they can tell me that they're struggling with wanting to attempt suicide, right? So that's what they're telling me. Here, all those 25 years of being a therapist, and then all the degrees and the information and the techniques and the trainings, combined with my authentic love for the people I serve, keep me in the wise mind. But what do you think happens if my kid says that? Zoop,
Mm-hmm.
emotional here, and all that learning went right out the door. What do you mean? What the hell? I don't understand. And I am completely ineffective.
That's huge.
Completely ineffective. So sometimes I'm not the person to respond. That's why they all got their own therapist. That's not me. Right? So really understanding what your triggers are, and maybe stepping back. Sometimes that it can be you, but stepping back and saying, okay, I'm here. Let me wait until I'm back here, and then we'll have that conversation. But like like your daughter, if she's answered why eight different times, 8,000 different times today, and she really is here, and she has no more capacity for the why, that's when tag you're it. I need to tap out for a minute
Mm-hmm.
because I'm not, I need to come back to the wise mind. I need to come back to the logic of knowing, like, okay, I know why they're asking. I know I love my kid, and I have the rationale and understanding behind it. So that's for free for all of us.
Mm-hmm.
Really knowing what takes you into each place,
Yep.
because I'm sure you have many stories about educators who are all here, logic and reasoning and rationale and da 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 da, and no heart, and don't give a darn about them kids. And they are
Mm-hmm.
probably the worst to be interacting with the kids. But
Yep.
also the ones who love them, but
Mm-hmm.
don't have any boundaries and don't respect any of the rules and guidelines, they're
Yep.
highly ineffective too.
Yep. 100%. We had a lady in the front office used to drive me crazy, because the kids would go hide out in the front office with her instead of coming to class, so that because they didn't do their homework or whatever, and they thought they were going to come turn it in later. Absolutely not. And now I'm in
Mm-hmm.
her office, like, don't let these kids hang out in your office no more, because you're not helping them. And I'm still not
Mm-hmm.
accepting the homework. So
Mm-hmm.
let them come to class so they don't miss today's lesson. So true, so true. And then I don't know if it's pronounced Cam or Com, but he said, um, when you forgive for yourself. And I know that's 100% true. I used to hear people say it, and I'll take their word for it. But I know the difference that I felt when I finally forgave my mom. And I wish I had done it sooner. And I don't think I had the power to do it. I don't think there was, like, I was like intentionally, like, I'm not going to forgive you. But there was so much hurt there that I didn't deal with at that time, that I couldn't forgive her. And she wasn't there to say, hey, I'm sorry, or forgive me, or anything like that. And the regret that I have is that my grandma was there, and because I didn't forgive my mom, my grandma was hurt because I kept talking about how bad my mom was to her. And what I'm doing is saying, you were a bad mom. Even I wasn't trying to say that to my grandma. She was great to me, but my mom didn't turn out okay. And so now my grandma's feeling bad every time I say it. She never said that to me, but I could tell the deflation that happened when I would talk about how bad my mom was. And if I had been able to heal that part of me sooner, then my grandma was already dead by the time I forgave my mom. So she didn't get to see that. She didn't get to see the healing happen in me.
I'm going to say a couple things. One, her being able to hold space for you to process those conversations led you there. So she really served and loved you in the ways that she could. And even though she wasn't there to see it, I'm sure that the seeds that she planted through hearing you and understanding you and giving you that space really blessed her soul. That's one.
Yeah.
Number two, I think we do have to talk about the reality that sometimes that unforgiveness, that anger, that resentment serves a purpose. And we have to ask ourselves what purpose is it serving? I'm going to give a couple of examples that like um, if I'm in a destructive relationship, right? And that person is no good for me. And I'm trying to leave and trying to leave and trying to leave. That anger, if I finally left that anger and resentment, I might hold on to it for years because as long as I'm holding on to the anger and resentment, then it's going to prevent me and block me from going back. But maybe I don't trust myself enough to be safe to not go back to that if I'm
Yeah.
not angry, or maybe there was some kind of heavy abuse and my anger keeps me more vigilant and I feel safer when I'm angry because I'm protecting myself until I feel safe, really safe, and I'm talking emotionally safe, I don't feel safe enough to release the anger or resentment. So we do have to talk about what kind of what underlying need that unforgiveness or that anger or resentment could be serving so that we can get to the nitty gritty of it and maybe meet that underlying need and give our mind, body, and soul permission to release it. Because I'd imagine that you probably were in a season in your life that allowed you and cultivated you being able to release that anger. But you had to be there, you had to be safe.
Yeah. Yeah. That is so good. Um, where can people find you?
Um, People can find me Instagram. Well, the easiest place is Chevonna.com. Having that unique spelling of my name, I was able to snatch that website. So CHEVONNA.com, and all things Chevonna tend to be there. It has a contact me button. It can take you to my number. It can take you to my an email address. You can reach me there. My book is there. Um, Also, social media, Instagram and Facebook, Chevonna LMFT. That's licensed marriage and family therapist. So at Chevonna LMFT on all social media, especially Instagram and Facebook. And um, there's one thing that I wanted to talk about that we didn't get a chance to talk about as we were talking about children and trauma. We talked about so many things. So the
Hmm.
last thing I do want to make sure that people know is that trauma in children, especially small children, can show up and manifest in different ways than it would necessarily in older children and adults. And we didn't really get a chance to talk about that. And I was like, I want to make sure I get to that because sometimes it's somatic or environmental. So you might find that a kid is having sleep difficulties, or they're saying my stomach hurts, my head hurts. It might show up as physical ailments or a very firm resistance to an environment. It could be a smell, a touch, a blanket, and you're like, why are they so having such an averse reaction to this thing? So maybe sometimes it may show up in those ways because children may not have the language to tell us what they're feeling, so it may come out in other ways. Think about sleep difficulties, physical ailments, or environmental like touch, smell, different kinds of concerns. And maybe that can usher in something that they're struggling with, that they maybe didn't have the language at that time. And you can broach those conversations, giving them comfort, giving them support, letting them know that they are loved and that they're safe with you, and ultimately providing the space for them to have that conversation with you.
I love that. And also bedwetting, right?
Yes, yes, yes. Bedwetting, nightmares, having a hard time sleeping. Yes. Oh, I don't like this. It's itchy. Where you're like, wait, where it's not, it's their reaction seems to be very much heightened to certain stimuli where you're like, huh, what is this about? Yes, but definitely bedwetting.
I had never thought about this, but when I was principal, I had one of my parents was getting divorced, and she said she was putting her kid in therapy, and he was in kindergarten, I think. And so I was like, hmm, something I never thought about is putting kids in therapy when there are breakups in the relationship. But how important is that for kids?
Definitely, I think that there are many ways to heal from a traumatic situation. It doesn't have to always be therapy. Therapy is a great option and avenue, but I think there are so many different ways that people can heal. Kind of equated to like the difference between the cold and the flu and pneumonia, right? If you and I were as friends, or you're like, "Oh, girl, I'm having a cold. I'm not feeling well," right? So what am I going to tell you? Oh, girl, take some vitamin C. Have some. I'm gonna give you all those natural remedies, the over the counter things. There are a lot of things you can do. All right. And so we're gonna talk about some of these natural ways in our environment that we can support your healing. But if I'm on the phone with you and you are like hacking, you sound like you're hacking up a lung, and your face is sunken and you look like you depleted, I would be wrong to tell you as your friend to be like, girl, have some orange juice and go take a nap. And you look like you're about
Ginger
to go into
ale.
a coma. Yeah, some ginger. Get you some ginger ale. That. What kind of friend would I be? My first response would be, "Hey, you need to go to the doctor. I want you to be okay. I want you to be safe." So when you're dealing with your kids or a friend or a loved one, know when you're dealing with a cold or something bigger. Because you would that make you a bad person to be like, "Hey, I'm thinking you tried. We were praying together and we went for some walks and we tried some things, but right now I really think that maybe you should consider therapy because it seems like things are big." If it was pneumonia, you would, or you don't have the skills to assess whether it's bronchitis, pneumonia, COVID. So you would want them to get the help that they need. So the
Yep,
same way when you're dealing with those emotions, it's one thing to be like, I'm having a rough day. But when you're like, okay, I think that we've talked and we've tried all these other natural ways and environmental ways, and it seems to be heavier, then we look at other options.
that's good. Um, I guess whew, that time has flown so quickly.
It did.
I do want to hear a bit about your book. Can you tell us, what your book is about?
Absolutely. It's called The Emerging Healer, Adding Insight and Impact to Your Mental Health Work. And it's for anyone who is seeking a deeper connection and wants to learn more about mental health experiences. It's a clinical guide, but also a memoir. It's kind of a self-help book, clinical guide, and a memoir all in one braid. So it's a good read for anyone who wants to learn a little bit more about mental health services, who wants to learn a little bit more about having deeper connections with other folks, and who wants to maybe look a little deeper into their own story. It's really transparent, and so it's everywhere books are sold, Barnes and Noble, Amazon. It's an ebook, it's a physical book, and I'm really proud of it. It was a while ago. I've been trying to force myself to write the next one, but it's coming. It's coming.
What's the next one going to be about?
It's actually going to be about trauma. It's going to be about I want to do a clinical guide, but I also want to tell the story of my family experience, but also I have one client who has been a very big inspiration in my life and who has given me permission and actually encouraged me to share her story. And each aspect, there's some interwoven themes, but each aspect I want to look at it from a clinical lens. So kind of like a psychological, I won't say thriller because these are actual real lives and real stories and real experiences, and not to romanticize pain, but to understand, like you were saying, being able to understand the multi-layered dynamics between your mom and your grandma. I want to be able to look at the story from those layers of experience, pain, understanding.
Thank you so much. Well, I honestly think you need a podcast. I'm gonna be on your back about that too, because there's so much value that you just offered, and so many people need to hear it that don't have the money for a therapist, but could benefit from hearing here are some strategies to get to a better place. So thank you so much for coming on my podcast and sharing. Always It's always a blessing for me anytime I get to spend some time with you. And thank you for sharing that with everyone. See, my
thank
cousin
you.
Taryn in the comments says she definitely needs a podcast. So
Thank you. And thank
yeah,
you for being you. I know you got to hop to your next person. Thank you for doing this. It is just, you are, I can't wait to continue to see you shine. I will
thank
always
you.
celebrate you. I will always cheer for you. I will always support you in any capacity. I love you and keep shining.
I love you too. Have a good one.
Bye.